Can you hear me now? Great. Great. So as I was discussing, can anyone tell me, as far as the C language is concerned, what is the size of an integer in C? Either you take it as C or C++, it's one and the same thing, doesn't matter. So what is the size of an integer in C, C++? 2 bytes, 2 bytes in C. Okay. No, well, the size of an integer is 4 bytes. Well, Mayuresh, that's not a right answer. That in C it is 2 bytes and in C++ it is 4 bytes. Irrespective of the language, it is always 4 bytes. Now, this basically depends on the architecture of the compiler that you're using. Okay. The reason why you're saying it's 2 bytes is because we are more commonly using Turbo C as the editor. Now, Turbo C is primarily a 16-bit architecture, that is, it's a 16-bit editor running on a 16-bit system, and that's exactly why in a 16-bit system, the size of an integer was considered as 2 bytes. But when you're using any of the advanced editors, which were purely designed for 32-bit architectures or 32-bit OS, which would be Visual C++, Boolean C++, and so on. All these were working on a 32-bit architecture. In a 32-bit architecture, the address bus is always given to you of 32 bits. Okay, and that is exactly why we need to consume the entire 32 bits for which 4 bytes was allocated. So it is very simple. Whether I allocate 2 bytes or whether I allocate 4 bytes, I would still require the same amount of CPU cycles to access them. So why unnecessarily waste that, and use half power? So I'm getting a architecture which is a complete architecture of 4 bytes which has been provided to me. So if I was seeing various sizes of the data types which are given to me in these languages, you would notice that in C, an int was 4 bytes, a short was obviously half of that 2, a long was left as it is, that is 4 bytes, a double was taken up as 8 bytes, a float was 4 bytes again. What is the size of a char? Absolutely right. There was 1 byte. And you had another data type which was introduced called as a bull that was used for booleans. What is the size of a boolean or a bull? 1 what, Raj? Absolutely right. This was 1 bit because it was only supposed to represent true or false in the form of 0 or 1. So these are the standard sizes which are provided to you in C++ provided you are using a 32-bit architecture. My question to you is, what would have been the size of a pointer in C in a 32-bit architecture? So if I'm using a 32-bit architecture and I'm using a pointer, what is the size of a pointer? Yes, Shailesh. The size of a pointer would have been 4 bytes. No, Akshay, the size is not 2 bytes. Please remember, we are working around with a 32-bit architecture. In a 32-bit architecture, the size is 4 bytes. I told you the address bus is of 32 bits. So the size is always going to be of the type 4 bytes. Now, my question is this. As per what you are saying, the size of a pointer is 4 bytes. Does the size of the pointer vary from data type to data type? Which means that if I'm considering I have an int data type, they're saying the size would be 4. If I have float, 4. What about double? The size of double is 8. So Mayur, do you still stick on to your answer saying that the size will not change? The size will not change. So the size of a pointer will always remain as 4 bytes. Absolutely right, Mayuresh, because it gives me an address. So what would be the size of a pointer in C where I have a structure called as X, and this structure X has got 4 integer variables. Okay, if it has got 4 integer variables, the size of a variable of struct X. So if I say something like this, struct X ABC, the size of ABC would have been, what would be the size be of ABC? 16 bytes. Absolutely right, Shailesh. This would have been 16 bytes. What would be the size of struct X star PTR? Okay, 4 bytes, absolutely right. Irrespective of the size of the data members of this class, the size of a pointer will always remain as 4 bytes. And the answer has been already given by you all because it is only simply referring to an address. So because a pointer only refers to an address, its size will always be 4 bytes. So one thing is very clear by the statement that you made is a pointer is a variable that holds the memory address of another variable or holds the memory address of a memory location. Everyone agrees to this? A pointer is a variable that holds the memory address of a location. I'm sure everyone would agree to this particular factor. If this is the case, then what I fail to understand is why do we have so many different types of pointers? You said whether it is a structure, whether it is a regular data type, irrespective of int, float, char, or whoever, the sizes are always going to be 4 bytes of a pointer. I accept your terminology. Then why do I have different types of pointers? Why do I have an integer pointer which has to be defined like this? Why do I have a float pointer which has to be defined in this manner? Why do I have a structure pointer for my struct X which has to be defined in this particular fashion? If as it is the size of the pointer is always the same, couldn't I just have a data type called as PTR where I could have said okay fine PTR है मतलब 4 बाइट का होएगा मतलब ये मेमोरी एड्रेस को रेफर करेगा तो मेरे को ये अलग अलग टाइप के पॉइंटर्स की क्या जरूरत है यहाँ पर Why should I have these different types of pointers? To identify the contents it points to. How does that benefit to me in any way? Because as it is, when we refer to a pointer is supposed to point to a memory address. तो उसमें कंटेंट क्या होगा? मेमोरी एड्रेस ही तो होने वाला है ना. वो और क्या पॉइंट करने वाला है? पॉइंटर खाली मेमोरी एड्रेस को पॉइंट करने वाला है. और अगर खाली पॉइंटर मेमोरी एड्रेस को पॉइंट करेगा तो उससे क्या फर्क पड़ता है? Okay, Nikhil, you are trying to talk about in case of arithmetic manipulation, right? Yes, Shelly, that's the same thing what we are talking about. So if suppose, let's say for instance, if I have a PTR pointer of the type integer which is pointing to memory address 800, let's consider this, and every time the programmer says PTR plus plus, I need to know how many bytes have to be incremented further. So मेरा address next कहाँ पे point होएगा? ये जानने के लिए that it has to go to 804, I need to know the type of the pointer. Agreeable? This is what we are trying to say. You see, this is the only reason why we have to specify the data type. Is this the only reason? क्योंकि मेरे को आगे जाके कभी ना कभी अरिथमेटिक ऑपरेशन करना है, इसके लिए मेरे को ऐसा कुछ चाहिए. As a matter of fact, आप लोग अगर आगे नोटिस करोगे तो जितने भी नए प्रोग्रामिंग लैंग्वेजेस है जैसे जावा .NET वगैरह, उसके अंदर हम अरिथमेटिक ऑपरेशन परफॉर्म ही नहीं कर सकते पॉइंटर्स के ऊपर. तो फिर इसका जो आपने जो रीजन दिया है वो तो नल अवॉइड हो जाता है वहां पर. मेमोरी partially okay, but उसकी भी जरूरत नहीं है because most of the new programming languages today they manage their own memory management system, something like what you must have already heard of, like garbage collection and stuff. So obviously I don't see any reason for that. Okay, are we all aware of a concept called as typecasting? ऐसे कुछ सुना है? We have something called as typecasting. Yes. What exactly is typecasting? Why do we have this principle called as typecasting? Let me give you a simple example. Let's consider I have a float variable which is called as value, and this is containing a value like 7.75f. Now I make a statement. I have an integer variable called as I value, and this is being assigned to value. Will this code compile 100% successfully? No, perfectly fine. So this is going to give you a warning stating that there is possible loss of data. If I consider the left hand side, it is an integer. An integer can only contain the whole value and not the decimal part. Correct? So if I try to assign value to I value will only hold the value 7, and the precision point, which is 0.75, which may be a very important factor, will be lost. And that's exactly why the compiler is telling you that this is going to be having a possible loss of data. अभी आपको पता है, मेरे को पता है that the data is going to be lost. Compiler मेरे को ये बता भी रहा है कि 0.75 जो फैक्टर है मेरा, this is going to be lost. ये डेटा तुम्हारे लिए इम्पोर्टेंट है ना, डेटा इम्पोर्टेंट है तुम्हारा और ये डेटा चले जाएगा. तो मैं काम करता हूँ, I typecast this in the form of an int. In short, I'm telling the compiler, please shut up. I know what I'm doing. I know there is going to be loss of this 0.75. I'm not interested in that. I'm only interested in the whole value. So by performing a typecasting, I have overridden the error that has been provided to me by the compiler. That's the principle called as typecasting. ये हम सबको पता होता है टाइपकास्टिंग क्या है. मेरा क्वेश्चन ये है, अगर ये टाइपकास्टिंग है तो टाइप चेकिंग क्या होता है? What is type checking? Okay, type checking is a simple concept followed by the compilers which checks if the left hand side is compatible to the right hand side or not. ठीक है, जो भी राइट हैंड साइड से असाइन होने वाला है लेफ्ट हैंड साइड को, जो रिसीवर है, क्या ये दोनों के बीच में कंपैटिबिलिटी है या नहीं है. This is what is being checked by type checking. Are these two types compatible to each other? Like for instance, अगर मेरे पास integer x नाम का एक वेरिएबल है holding 5 और integer y नाम का एक वेरिएबल है let's say initially holding 10. I say x is equal to y. y का डेटा टाइप और x का डेटा टाइप इवैल्यूएट किया जाता है. If y is of the type int and x is of the type int, I say both of them are compatible. The data can be easily transferred between them. But if I consider that I have x which is equal to 5 and I have float y which is equal to 2.25 and I say x is equal to y. Now the compiler says that y comprises of decimal points which x cannot hold. So int versus float, they are not compatible. Because these two guys are not compatible, I am going to go ahead and give him an error. So this basic principle of checking whether the left hand side is capable of receiving the right hand side information or not is what we call as type check. ठीक है, इसीलिए अगर आप नोटिस करोगे तो अगर मेरे पास कल ऐसे होगा इंटीजर x और यहाँ पर आई एम गोइंग टू असाइन obj where obj may be an object of a class or a structure, compiler will not allow you to do something like this, right? So इसीलिए type checking होता है. So type checking is always going to check the LHS for compatibility with the RHS, whether LHS has the capability of receiving the data or not. Because type checking is there, that's exactly why we need to think about typecasting. अगर type check कोई करता ही नहीं था तो typecasting का होने का कोई मतलब ही नहीं होता था. So the whole idea of type checking is because of typecasting, or vice versa. Sorry. Now, why am I talking about all this is very important. Just for 2 minutes, let's consider हमारे पास अलग-अलग टाइप के पॉइंटर्स नहीं है. ठीक है, I am assuming कि हमारे पास अलग-अलग डेटा टाइप ऑफ पॉइंटर्स नहीं है. We just have a common data type for a pointer called as PTR. ये नाम का मेरा कॉमन पॉइंटर है. अब मैंने क्या किया है, मैंने C में एक अपने लिए खुद के लिए प्रोग्राम बनाया है, सॉरी फंक्शन बनाया है. दिस फंक्शन इज कॉल्ड एज toUpper. toUpper फंक्शन क्या करता है? It takes a parameter in the form of a pointer, uses some logic and converts whatever data is there into uppercase. A very simple function that I am considering out here. Now inside my main function, I go ahead calling this function in this manner. Integer value is equal to 50. toUpper, passing him value. Will this code compile? Obviously not. Why? Simple reason. Correct. You need the address of operator out here. Correct. Absolutely right. The simple reason, compiler इतना basic checking कर लेता है कि toUpper को चाहिए pointer और मैंने इसको पास किया है directly data type. तो ये possible नहीं है. तो मैं इसको resolve करता हूँ by simply adding up the address of operator. Where I tell him I pass the address of value into toUpper, which takes a pointer as an argument. Now this is syntactically valid. Now there is no issue. The function toUpper requires a pointer, and when I'm calling the function toUpper, I am passing in the pointer. That is, I'm passing the address of a variable. It's perfectly fine. So then, how the hell does the toUpper function convert 50 into an uppercase or an integer variable into an uppercase? So basically, this whole program itself is invalid because the main meaning of the function toUpper has been violated out here. I can only convert strings into uppercases. I cannot convert integer variables or float variables or any other variable into an uppercase. And there is nowhere that the programmer can state to the compiler, look, I require a character pointer and not an integer pointer. So I'm not requiring an address of an integer, but I require an address of a character. You get my point? That's exactly why we cannot have a standard data type called as pointers out here. Again, the basic reason being that type checking would have been violated if we would have had only a PTR data type. तो इसलिए इन्होंने क्या किया, इन्होंने बोला ठीक है तुम कैरेक्टर पॉइंटर डिफाइन करो, तुम इंटीजर पॉइंटर डिफाइन करो, तुम फ्लोट पॉइंटर डिफाइन करो, बेसिकली जो भी तुम्हारा डेटा टाइप रहेगा उसके बेसिस के ऊपर तुम पॉइंटर्स डिफाइन करो। इससे एडवांटेज मेरे को क्या मिलेगा, मैं वापस से टू अपर फंक्शन को डिफाइन कर सकता हूँ। इस बार टू अपर फंक्शन कैरेक्टर पॉइंटर पीटीआर लेता है और जो भी बिजनेस लॉजिक है वो यहाँ पे डिफाइन कर देता है, ठीक है। नाउ व्हेन आई कॉल द टू अपर फॉर द सेकंड वर्जन ऑफ माय फंक्शन, द कंपाइलर चेक्स आर्गुमेंट क्या जा रहा है, एड्रेस और वैल्यू, वैल्यू क्या है, इंटीजर, इन शॉर्ट आई एम सेंडिंग एन इंटीजर पॉइंटर, लेकिन मेरा जो रिसीविंग एंड है, रिसीविंग एंड इज अ कैरेक्टर पॉइंटर, the two types are not compatible and hence a compilation error will be raised out. Are we all clear why we have those different data types of pointers? Anyone would like to ask anything? Any questions? Great. So that's basically the principle of a pointer. You will see something like this coming up in Java also. I'll just brief you at that particular point of time that this is what we are using and nothing greater than that. So that's something what we focus at that particular point of time out there. Let's proceed to our next concept, what we have. Let's get down to some principles of C++ again, which I require, which are going to be pretty essential. We have already discussed this concept called as inheritance and stated that inheritance is, yes. Okay, Shailesh, void pointers basically, void indicates no data type. Okay, now void pointers are used as generic pointers. They are also technically termed as generic pointers. This is very useful when you want to define functions or uh, either pass arguments or receive arguments where the data type is not known to you. For example, if I want to allocate any memory on the heap in case of C, I always use a method called as malloc or calloc. If you look at the return type of this method, this return type of the method is technically a void pointer. The reason why it's a void pointer is because malloc is returning a value for whom is not known. What I mean to say is I may have something like this, integer star ptr, this is equal to malloc and the size of integer, let's say 4 bytes. Or I may have malloc maybe 16 bytes and this is referring to struct x star ptr. तो जो मेरा लेफ्ट हैंड साइड ऑपरेंड यहाँ पर है, ये एक स्ट्रक्चर पॉइंटर हो सकता है, ये इंटीजर पॉइंटर हो सकता है, ये फ्लोट पॉइंटर हो सकता है, कोई भी हो सकता है, मेरे को नहीं पता ये कौन है। इसीलिए प्रोग्रामर को यहाँ पर उसका साइज डिफाइन करके देना पड़ता है कि उसको कितना मेमोरी एलोकेट करके चाहिए। तो मैलॉक क्या बोलता है, आई एम अ जनरलाइज्ड फंक्शन, मेरे को नहीं पता कि मेरे को कोई कौन कितने मेमोरी एलोकेट करने के लिए यूज कर रहा है, मेरे को सिर्फ इतना पता है कि अगर वो मेरे को बोलता है मेरे को 20 बाइट्स ऑफ मेमोरी चाहिए तो आई हैव टू एलोकेट 20 बाइट्स ऑफ मेमोरी और वो 20 बाइट्स ऑफ मेमोरी का जो एड्रेस है, बेस एड्रेस, वो मेरे को यहाँ से रिटर्न करके देना है। इसीलिए सी ने उसके लिए एक जनरलाइज्ड पॉइंटर ले लिया कॉल्ड एज void pointer. If you remember void refers to nothing technically. So a nothing pointer means it is not associated with any data type. It's a simple memory address which we are considering, and that's exactly why whenever we use malloc, it is mandatory for us to perform a typecasting out here. That's why we do the typecasting. I hope I've answered your question. Great. Okay. Now, coming down to our next point, which I was talking about, inheritance. It's one of the very key important features in case of C++. I'm just talking about those specific terminologies or stuff that we are going to be requiring for Java. That's the reason why you're seeing a jump from one topic to another topic in this manner. Remember what we discussed about inheritance? Inheritance also has another term. It is also called as specialization. Okay. If you are not specializing, you are not inheriting. What do I mean by this? If today, let's consider I have a class called as bird, okay, and this class bird comprises of three data members and two methods. I prepare another class called as, let's say, just out of curiosity, a class called as parrot, which is inheriting from bird. Okay, and I don't do anything out here. I am not adding new properties. I am not adding new functions, or I'm not changing any functions. Assumption. If I'm not doing anything, then there is no concept of inheritance out here. Inheritance will only come into existence provided an existing type is further enhanced. Then only the meaning of inheritance comes into existence. So unless and until I do not alter the original type by adding some new properties, some new behaviors, or for all the matter, even modifying any existing behavior, there is no principle of inheritance. Inheritance allows me to do a lot of good things. Let me give you a very simple example. You guys walk into a showroom. Let's say you want a good, powerful car, and you go ahead and pick up a Ford Fiesta. Just saw the ad today, so just talking about Ford Fiesta. Okay, so you guys walk into the showroom and you buy a Ford Fiesta. Now, we all know that Ford Fiesta is technically a sedan, which is a family sedan. So it's basically used for a family car. Can I take this car and just from the showroom drive into a rally and participate into a rally? That's not going to be possible. So what I need to do is I need to make a lot of alterations in order to make that car capable of entering into a rally. This does not mean that tomorrow if I want to venture into a rally, I start creating a car from scratch. मैं अपना खुद का एक प्लांट डालूंगा, उस प्लांट के या एक मैन्युफैक्चरिंग यूनिट डालूंगा, वो मैन्युफैक्चरिंग यूनिट में खुद का गाड़ी प्रिपेयर करूंगा, ऐसे नहीं होने वाला है. What I need to do is I only need to enhance this particular car. So what do? I buy a ready-made car, okay, which I'm considering as a base type, and I'm going to start altering this. So maybe I may want to change the fenders. Maybe I want to play a bit with the fuel injection system. Maybe I want to go ahead and make modifications to the software which is there inside, such that it converts from a fuel efficient sedan family car to a powerful sports engine car. So this is something which I do as far as specialization is concerned. So specialization will allow me to alter any existing data type, that is existing class, by adding new features or behaviors into that type and specializing it. It is exactly the reverse of abstraction. Abstraction is also called as another terminology. We oftenly also call this as generalization. आप जितना ज़्यादा generalize करते हो उतना ज़्यादा अच्छा है. For that you need to always go up the hierarchy. आप जितना ज़्यादा specialization करते हो, depending on your use, it's better. That time you're going down the hierarchy. Okay. So generalization में we go up the hierarchy. The specialization may come down the hierarchy. The more the specialization, the more specific task you're creating, or for a specific task you're generating. The more the generalization, the more the common task you're creating. So that's the basic difference between abstraction and inheritance. Technically, if you see, they're exactly opposite to each other. Now, as far as we know, in C++, we used to have these basic basic types of inheritance which were provided to us. So what we had was we had something like single inheritance, where let's say I have a class base. From the base class, I have another class derived called as class B. तो ये आपका हो गया single inheritance. Second, हमारे पास multi-level inheritance होता था, where I have class A that is inherited into another class called as B. B is inherited into another class called as C. So you see a perfect example of multi-level inheritance. The third inheritance we had was multiple inheritance, where I had two base classes A and B, And using these two base classes, I was forming a common type, maybe called as C. So C had two parents, A as well as B. A perfect example of multiple inheritance. And the fourth and the final one which we had was hybrid inheritance, a combination of multiple and multi-level, which used to go in this manner, where I had class A, which was the base class to B and C, and B and C were base classes to class B. ठीक है ना? तो अगर आप टेक्निकली A to B देखोगे तो ये सिंगल इनहेरिटेंस हो गया, A to C देखोगे तो ये सिंगल इनहेरिटेंस हो गया, A B D देखोगे ये मल्टी लेवल इनहेरिटेंस हो गया, A C D मल्टी लेवल इनहेरिटेंस हो गया, B C वर्सेस D अगर इन तीनों को खाली कंसिडर किया तो ये आपका मल्टी इनहेरिटेंस हो गया। तो ये मल्टीपल इनहेरिटेंस आ गया, यहां पर आपको मल्टी लेवल इनहेरिटेंस आ गया, right? So a combination of multiple inheritance versus multi-level inheritance is what you are getting to see as hybrid inheritance. Okay. So three types of inheritance generally we are talking about: single inheritance, multi-level inheritance, multiple inheritance, and hybrid inheritance. Now, can anyone tell me what is the biggest drawback of hybrid inheritance? Perfectly fine, Mayuresh. Ambiguity. Ambiguity of what, Mayuresh? What ambiguity are we referring to? Perfect. B and C properties. So if I was considering, let's say that I had the class A. Class A had integer variables x and y. ठीक है? अगर मैंने क्लास A का एक ऑब्जेक्ट बनाया, उसका साइज कितना होगा? क्लास A का अगर मैंने सिर्फ क्लास A है उसका ऑब्जेक्ट बनाया तो इसका साइज मेरे को आएगा 8 बाइट्स. परफेक्टली फाइन. So the size of this will be 8 bytes. Now consider that class A has been inherited into another class called as B, and class B has got two variables probably called as G and H. What will be the size of class B if I instantiate an object of B? Perfect, Raj and Shwetam. The size will be 16 bytes. So great. This is size is going to be 16 bytes. If A is also inherited into a class called as C, and this has got two integer variables I and J, the size of C would be again 16 bytes. Perfectly fine. So if I am referring to this, I can say something like this. ये मेरा क्लास A है, इसमें x के लिए 4 बाइट्स है, y के लिए 4 बाइट्स है, और इसके लिए मेरा साइज 8 बाइट्स हो जाता है. जब मैं क्लास B का ऑब्जेक्ट देखता हूं तो ये मेरा B का ऑब्जेक्ट है. Now whenever I consider class B, B contains two parts, one pertaining to A, one pertaining to B. यहाँ पर आपको x और y के लिए 4-4 बाइट मिलता है, यहाँ पर आपको G और H के लिए 4-4 बाइट मिलता है. So that's the reason the total size of this comes down to 16 bytes. Okay, this is what we get to see out here. Now, if I consider that B and C were further inherited into class D, and D had the variables K and L of the type integer. अब साइज क्या होगा? If I create an object of the class D, what will be the size of class D or an object of the class D? Yes, Shweta. 16 plus 16 plus 8. That is 40 bytes. Does everyone agree to Shweta is the size is going to be 40 bytes? Mayuresh, 32 plus 16 plus 8. No, Mayuresh, you are absolutely out of track. Mayuresh, can you take a piece of paper and just try to draw the object notation like I showed you earlier? And please recalculate the size. Shailesh, 32 bytes. Ideally. Ideally. There's nothing ideal which works around. Ideally, it should have been. But what is the final size? What we get in this case? Yes, Shweta and Prerna, both of you are right. The answer is 40 bytes. Now, how do I come to the conclusion of 40 bytes? So, if I consider you had 8 bytes for 8. No, so how do you calculate depends on you. You can take it in this manner. 8 is going to be united into B, right? So if I consider A, you have 8 bytes for A plus 8 bytes for B individually. ये दोनों मिलाकर मेरा ऑब्जेक्ट बी बन रहा है. वैसे ही अगर आप नोटिस करोगे तो 8 बाइट्स फॉर ए प्लस 8 बाइट्स फॉर सी, ये दोनों मिलाकर मेरा ऑब्जेक्ट सी बन रहा है. प्लस डी के अपने खुद के दो वेरिएबल्स हैं, तो डी का खुद का साइज जो है वो 8 बाइट्स है. So if you calculate the total of this, the result is going to be 40 bytes. Okay, now if you notice in this entire object creation, no Ankush, the answer is 40 bytes because of the repetition that we have of the objects. So if you look at the entire scenario, you see that your object A has been repeated twice, once here and once here. Okay, so that's 16 bytes for object A, which is repeated, 8 bytes for B, 8 bytes for C. That makes it another 16 bytes. So it's 32 bytes and 8 bytes for specifically B, which makes it to 40 bytes. So your correct answer for this is going to be 40 bytes. Is it that the size we are really bothered about? Are we concerned about the size? No, we are not bothered about the wastage of memory. Come on, 40 bytes, not a very big deal, right? When we are talking about today, we are running with RAMs and stuff which are into GBs. These bytes are really not going to pinch us at all. Yes, Nikhil, the main concern is the ambiguity. So how does this ambiguity come into existence? Okay, now for the ambiguity aspect, let me show you something. Ambiguity कैसे आता है? Let's have a look. Right. Now let's consider that I have created B का एक object, B obj. ठीक है? If I consider B obj as the object, इसके अंदर चार पार्ट्स आ जाएंगे, X, Y, G और H. तो ये स्पेसिफिक पोर्शन B का है, ये स्पेसिफिक पोर्शन A का है, और ये टोटल अगर आप ऑब्जेक्ट को देखोगे तो दिस इज व्हाट वी कॉल एज B. So when I say obj.x out here and try to assign a value 5, or I say obj.y out here and try to assign a value 10, in this entire object that I'm seeing, there is only one x, there is only one y, there is no ambiguity absolutely, and everything works perfectly great. The same funda will also be applicable when I'm talking about object C. ठीक है, वापस से C के पास xy रहेगा और ij रहेगा, तो वहां पर भी कोई कंफ्यूजन होने का सवाल ही नहीं होता, and that's exactly why for individual objects of B and C, everything works perfectly great. Now consider that I have created an object of B. अगर आप D का ऑब्जेक्ट देखोगे तो D ऑब्जेक्ट फॉर्मेशन इस तरीके से जाता है. ठीक है, ये आपका आ गया x y, ये पार्ट है A का, ये आ गया G और H, ये पार्ट है आपका बी का, ये जो पूरा ऑब्जेक्ट आपका है, ये पूरा ऑब्जेक्ट आपका है related to B. The diagram is wrong. I need two more elements. ठीक है, just split it out here, doesn't matter. यहाँ पर वापस आएगा x और y, which is a part of A. यहाँ पर आ जाएगा आपका I और J, which is a part of C. अब ये पूरा सेक्शन आपका मिलाकर हो जाता है C, and this is K and L, which is the new data members that we added in B. अगर आप ये पूरा सेट देखोगे तो ये पूरे सेट का विजिबिलिटी D हो जाता है, ठीक है. Now again what we are noticing in this case is x and y from A of the type C and x and y of the type A from the part B is what has been repetitive. So the moment I try to make a statement like this, obj dot x is equal to 5, which x am I referring to? Am I referring to the x which has come to me via A of B, or which has come to me via A of C? So this creates an ambiguity because the entire visibility is available to me. Any way I can resolve this ambiguity without changing the inheritance? Is there any way I can resolve this ambiguity? No, I said I don't want to change. I don't want to change the inheritance without changing the inheritance. Is there any way I can resolve this ambiguity without changing the inheritance? There is a way. What I could have done is something like this. Obj dot B scope position operator x is equal to 5. Obj dot C scope position operator x is equal to 10. So now I'm telling him कि जब I'm accessing obj dot b scope position operator x, b का जितना वैलिडिटी है तुम्हारा, इस b के वैलिडिटी में जो x है इसका वैल्यू सेट करो, या c का जितना वैलिडिटी है तुम्हारा उसके इसके अंदर जितना है जो x है उसको एक्सेस करो. ये एक तरीका है. Obviously still this does not have any meaning because you can just imagine if I was considering instead of class A I was using the term employee, he would have been, let's say, a manager, C would have been a salesperson, and B would have been a sales manager. अगर हम लोग रियल सिस्टम में ऐसे कुछ कंसिडर करें और X के बदले में मैंने कंसिडर किया कि ये एम्प्लॉय का नेम है, तो एक एम्प्लॉय को दो नाम नहीं हो सकता. जब वो मैनेजर है तो उसको हम लोग कुछ और बुलाएंगे और जब वो सेल्स पर्सन है तो उसको और कुछ बुलाएंगे. That's not possible. That's the reason why this entire system is a failure. Okay, but ideally I could have done this. अच्छा, ये तो 100% सब लोग एग्री करते हैं कि इसका दो कॉपी जाने वाला है डिराइव क्लास को. दिस एवरीवन इज वेरी क्लियर अबाउट कि x और y का दो कॉपी डिराइव क्लास को जाएगा. अगर आप लोग ये एक्सेप्ट करते हो कि x और y का दो कॉपी डिराइव क्लास को जाएगा, तो इसका ये मतलब है कि दोनों भी अलग अलग वैल्यूज होल्ड कर सकते हैं. मतलब b का x कैन होल्ड 5 एंड c का x कैन होल्ड 10 and I should be able to print these values out. Yes, this is what is my thinking about this particular topic. Let's see whether this is correct or not. So what I'm going to do now is just to give you a quick example. I'm going to go ahead and prepare a new C++ project, simple WinRedo application. I'll just call this as second app. Really doesn't matter what name you're giving. It's a empty Windows console-based application that I'm creating. I'm not going to follow any code ethics out here. I'm just going to be more in a hurry to just do this particular code. So inside this, I'm creating a new source file. There we are source.cpp. As I said, it doesn't make a difference. And I say hash include IO stream this for cout statements using namespace st. Coming down to the same example what I've considered earlier, I have a base class called as x. To be able to access it everywhere, I'm going to have two variables in that, integer x and integer y. From this class A, I'm going to publicly init a class called as B. Under the public section of that, I'm going to have integer variables g and integer variables h. I'm going to have another class C, which is publicly inherited from A. So what you're seeing is a single level inheritance as far as B and C are concerned. And under the public section of this, I'm going to have I and J. And finally, I'm going to have a class T, which is publicly inherited from B and publicly inherited from C. So I've seen an example of a hybrid inheritance out here. In this, I'm going to have two variables, integer L and K. Coming down to the main code, I go ahead and create an object of B. Just to clarify on whatever we've seen so far, I'm going to say cout and print the size of obj. Build my code and execute the same. So if you notice, the size of obj what we are getting is 40 bytes, which we have verified out here. Now, I make a statement out here. Obj dot x is equal to 1. The moment I try to build this code, it gives me an error. Ambiguous access of x. This is what we have discussed. There are two copies of x that we are referring to. Since there are two copies of x, I'm having this problem. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to resolve the ambiguity by simply saying this is b superposition operator x, which is equal to 1, and this is c superposition operator x, which is equal to 2. And here I'll say cout obj dot b superposition operator x and cout obj dot c superposition operator x. सबसे पहली बात, I'm building this code. One, you notice the code is successfully compiling. There's absolutely no problem with the code compilation. Second, I'm going to execute this code. Now, if there are two outputs given to me, that is 1 and 2, this means that both of them are holding individual values. So let's try and see that. Perfectly fine. Now, how do I 100% justify this to you? So what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to set a breakpoint by using F9, and I'm going to debug my code. Everyone can see the watch window on the left hand side. I'm going to put up obj as an object out there. When I come down to the object obj, I expand that, which shows you some few major parts given to you out here. Please note these or notice very carefully onto what I'm showing you. You have K, you have L, then you have class C, class B. Right? These are the basic points which have been provided to you out here. Now, if I am going to go ahead and expand C, C shows me I and J, and along with I and J, it shows me X and Y pertaining to A. Same way, B shows me G and H, and corresponding to that, it shows me the respective values. Now, please notice this very carefully. The moment I say obj.x, obj.b superposition operator x is equal to 1, look at the watch window and notice which value of x is getting altered. Do you see that Cx is still with garbage value? It's holding a different value, whereas Bx has been modified to 1. Same way, if I execute CX wala statement, you will notice the second value change. So now what I get to see, is the X pertaining to C and the X pertaining to B, both are holding two different values. ठीक है, all those who are still having doubts कि 40 बाइट्स कैसे आ गया, अभी आप सीधा यहाँ पे कैलकुलेट कर सकते हो. इसके लिए 4 बाइट, इसके लिए 4 बाइट, 4 4, तो 16 बाइट्स यहाँ पर हो गया. Same with 4 4 4 4, that's another 16 bytes, that's 32, and 4 and 4, 8 bytes. So you get that as total of 40 bytes, which has been clearly indicated to you in this scenario. Is everyone clear till this point? Does anyone have any questions pertaining to this part now? Now you understand how those two copies are being duplicated and sent down. Anyone with any questions? Come on, guys. Still a confusion? I can help you resolve it. Great. Now, how do I resolve this ambiguity? So I already got that answer earlier, saying that this ambiguity could have been resolved by simply using virtual base classes, right? So what are we gonna do? While I'm inheriting class B from A and C from A, I'm going to precede the keyword virtual in front of it, which means that my class A automatically is converted to a virtual base class. Okay, now if I'm going to convert this into a virtual base class, ये जो मेरा पूरा डायग्राम है, ये फुल डायग्राम मेरा चेंज हो जाएगा अभी. ठीक है, तो अभी कैसे होएगा? This is going to be looking something like this. My lines never come straight, I don't know why. Anyway, so यहाँ पर what I'm going to have is I'm going to have X, I'm going to have Y. Okay, sorry. Can anyone tell me what will be the size of OBJ if OBJ is of the type B and I have considered virtual base classes in this case? What will be the size of OBJ? अगर अभी का आप एग्जांपल ले रहे हैं वर्चुअल बेस क्लासेस को यूज करते हुए, उसका साइज क्या होगा? Mayur is still 40, then what's the point of using virtual base classes? Prerna 32. Think about it, please. Aditya, where you get 8 from? Of course not. How can the size be 8 when there are so many data members out there? No, Aditya. Ankush 24, how did he calculate 24? 16, Shweta, how did he get that? Come on. Can the size be equivalent or more to what we were having earlier? मयूरेश आपको 40 कैसे आ गए? इसको कर रहे हो क्या? दिखा भी उधर आई गेस. कैसे कैलकुलेट किया मयूरेश आपने 40? Come on, guys. Okay, well, yes, Shweta. B and C are having common as A. Yes. Yes, Mayuresh, data members will be inherited. You're absolutely right. तो अगर वो डेटा मेंबर्स इनहेरिट करके भी पकड़ लोगे आप, तो आपके हिसाब से जो भी हमने कैलकुलेट किया है उसके हिसाब से साइज खाली 32 बाइट्स आना चाहिए मैक्सिमम. अच्छा सुनिए, एवरीवन प्लीज पे अटेंशन. आई एम शोइंग यू समथिंग रॉन्ग राइट नाउ. ठीक है, मैं अभी जो भी बता रहा हूँ वो गलत है. दिस इज जस्ट टू क्लियर योर अंडरस्टैंडिंग, सो प्लीज बी वेरी केयरफुल. आइडियली वर्चुअल बेस्ड क्लासेस के बाद होना क्या चाहिए, मेमोरी शेयर होना चाहिए. या आई वुड से डुप्लीकेट कॉपी आना नहीं चाहिए डायरेक्ट क्लास के अंदर. तो अगर आप ए सेक्शन को देखोगे, ठीक है, तो ए सेक्शन के लिए 4 बाइट्स वाई के लिए आएगा, 4 बाइट्स एक्स के लिए आएगा. बी सेक्शन के लिए जी और एच आएगा, तो इनका 4 बाइट्स आ गया. सी के लिए आई और जे आएगा, तो इसका 4 बाइट्स आ गया. और डी के लिए के और एल आएगा, और इन दोनों का 4 आएगा. So if you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8. So that's going to be 8 data members of the size 4, which should result into 32 bytes. Everyone agrees to this? Ideally ऐसे होना चाहिए. यही होना चाहिए था कि मेरे पास A का सिर्फ एक सिंगल कॉपी आया है. ठीक है, A का पहले हम लोग को A का 2 कॉपी आ रहा था, B के लिए A अलग आ रहा था, C के लिए A अलग आ रहा था. अब वो नहीं हो रहा है. तो A का एक कॉमन कॉपी आ रहा है, इसके लिए उसको खाली 4 बाइट का मेमोरी मिल रहा है, और बाकी के 4 बाइट की मेमोरी जो भी मेरे हैं. तो टेक्निकली अगर आप देखने आओगे तो इसका टोटल साइज 32 आना चाहिए, बट ये नहीं होता है. इसका आंसर अभी भी 40 आता है. साइज ऑफ दिस ऑब्जेक्ट इज स्टिल गोइंग टू बी 40 बाइट्स, एंड दैट्स अ वेरी वेरी बिग क्वेश्चन मार्क एज टू व्हाई. क्यों इसका साइज 40 आना चाहिए? इट्स वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग. प्लीज नोटिस व्हाट रियली टेक्स प्लेस. जो आपका ऑब्जेक्ट फॉर्मेशन हो रहा है वो कुछ अब इस तरीके से हो रहा है. सबसे पहले आपका ऑब्जेक्ट ए के लिए x और y ये दोनों को एलोकेट किया जाता है. इसका साइज 4 बाइट्स है. So there is absolutely no ambiguity out here. A has been allocated 8 bytes. Then comes up your next object, which is B. B gets your basic data members that you know about, which is G and H. इसके बाद आता है आपका C. C again gets its basic data members which you know about, I and J. Then comes up D, which again has its basic data members that you are aware of, K and L. तो ये हमारा बेसिक स्ट्रक्चर बन जाता है जैसे बनना चाहिए. लेकिन अब प्रॉब्लम क्या है, जो मेरा सेक्शन सी का है, ठीक है, दिस सेक्शन ऑफ सी जो है ये, और जो मेरा सेक्शन बी का है, दैट इज दिस पार्ट, इन दोनों, ये दोनों कहां से इनहेरिट हो रहे हैं? If I look at B and C both are being inherited from A. If both are being inherited from A, then they should have the data members of A. They should have access to data members of A. If they have to have access to data members of A, how are they going to access A? Because A has been formed separately below. पहले क्या हुआ था? पहले B के पास A का कॉपी था, C के पास A का कॉपी था, तो ये डायरेक्टली इसको एक्सेस कर सकते थे. अब ये अलग से बन गया है, बिकॉज इट्स अ वर्चुअल बेस क्लास, उसका कॉपी शेयर करना है. इन्होंने क्या किया, इन्होंने यहां पर एक पॉइंटर इंट्रोड्यूस किया. अब ये जो पॉइंटर है, जो बी का पॉइंटर है, वो पॉइंट करेगा ए के सेक्शन को, और जो सी का पॉइंटर है ये पॉइंट करेगा ए के सेक्शन को. तो जब भी आप बोलोगे कि मेरे को सपोज बी ओबीजे है, ठीक है, और मेरे को यहां पर बोलना है ओबीजे डॉट, चाहे सी के थ्रू करो, चाहे बी के थ्रू करो, चाहे डायरेक्टली करो, दिस डॉट एक्स इज इक्वल टू 5. अब उसको पता है सी हैज टू एक्सेस एक्स. एक्स किसका है? ए का. तो वो कैसे एक्सेस करेगा? सी अपना पॉइंटर यूज करेगा, इट इज पॉइंटिंग टू दिस पार्ट. ठीक है, लेट्स से फॉर एग्जांपल ये बेस एड्रेस 800 है, तो यहाँ पर आपका पीटीआर 800 को पॉइंट कर रहा है, यहाँ पे आपका पीटीआर 800 को पॉइंट कर रहा है, और इसको यूज करते हुए वो x को एक्सेस करेगा. Now, because this x pointer or whatever this pointer has been added up out here and here, the size of these pointers 4 bytes has been added into your structure. So original जो size था आपका वो 32 bytes था, plus 4 and 4 bytes for both the pointers, you get 40. अब आपको क्वेश्चन ये होना चाहिए कि अगर ये भी 40 बाइट चला तो फिर फायदा क्या हुआ इसका. तो इसका फायदा तभी दिखने आता है जब डेटा मेंबर्स बेस क्लास में ज्यादा होते हैं. अब यहाँ पर अगर मेरे पास कल 2 के बदले में 6 डेटा मेंबर्स होते हैं, ईच ऑफ द साइज 4 बाइट्स, तो 24 बाइट्स टेक्निकली हर बार इंक्रीज होता. अब 24 बाइट्स हर बार इंक्रीज नहीं होगा, इररिस्पेक्टिव ऑफ दैट साइज, सिर्फ 2 पॉइंटर के लिए 8 बाइट ही इंक्रीज. आर वी ऑल क्लियर विद दिस? Now, if this statement, what I say is valid, then in that case, whether I change via C or whether I change via B, एक ही कॉपी x का रिफ्लेक्ट होना चाहिए. देखते हैं. सबसे पहले तो मैं पूरे कोड को रीबिल्ड कर रहा हूं. ये कोड को रीबिल्ड करने के बाद लेट्स ट्राई टू सी द साइज. तो पहले हम लोग इसका साइज प्रिंट करके देख लेते क्या आता है. So if you notice, the size is still 40 bytes. There is no change to the size as we were discussing about. Now the next thing that I'm going to do is, like how we had manipulated x and y separately, we are going to manipulate that in C. Build करते हैं. Let's debug this code. सबसे पहले let's expand obj. k और l वही है, no changes. a separately आ गया x and y के साथ, which we can see out here. C के पास ij है और a का सेक्शन दिखा रहा है, वो एक्चुअली उसका पॉइंटर है. B के पास G और H है और A का सेक्शन बता रहा है जो उसका पॉइंटर है. Okay. Now, earlier when I was changing the value of X via B, when I was changing the value of X via B, you would have noticed that only B का X was getting changed. बराबर है. अभी आपको एक काम करना है. जैसे ही मैं ये कोड को एग्जीक्यूट करूंगा, आपको क्या चेक करना है? एक ये वाला वैल्यू चेक करना है, एक ये वाला वैल्यू चेक करना है, और ये वही है, सेम ही है, आप इसको चेक करोगे. So the moment I execute that statement, you will notice that all these 3 values eventually get altered. Can you see that? All 3 values have been changed. Now again, if I say C's composition operator x is equal to 2, again, चाहे आप B के थ्रू एक्सेस करो या C के थ्रू एक्सेस करो, क्या फर्क पड़ने वाला है? अल्टीमेटली x तो एक ही कॉपी है. The moment I execute that statement, आप रियलाइज करोगे सबका वैल्यू चेंज हो जाएगा. इसीलिए आप जब आउटपुट देखोगे इसका, तो इसके आउटपुट के केस में यू विल नोटिस x और y दोनों का ही आउटपुट दोनों आएगा आपको. जो भी लास्ट मॉडिफिकेशन हुआ है वही आने वाला है. आर वी ऑल क्लियर टिल दिस पॉइंट? So now one thing is clear, that whenever you use virtual inheritance, only one copy is sent. Pointers are created which refer to that particular copy, and we can manipulate in that particular manner. ये अलग बात है, फिर भी मल्टीपल इनहेरिटेंस और हाइब्रिड इनहेरिटेंस नहीं यूज किया जाता है. अब वो क्यों यूज नहीं होता है, दैट इज समथिंग व्हाट वी नीड टू लुक इनटू. So that takes care of this part at least, and hopefully we are clear with this section. Let's carry on further. Now, Yes, Shailesh, go ahead. Yeah, Bx is referring to Ax. You're right. Because whether you're talking about Bx or Cx, they ultimately are sharing the same copy of Ax. So there is initially what was happening when we were not using virtual inheritance, there were two separate copies of A. Right now, there is only a single copy of A, and both these copies of A are being internally referred by B and C. So technically speaking, you're absolutely right. They both are referring to the same guy. No typecasting is required. No typecasting is required. Just sharing the copy. It's via a pointer internally. You don't need to typecast out here. They are using a pointer internally. That pointer which I had shown you earlier, the PTR, there's a pointer internally which was being used in order to access them. So this all happens the moment you add the virtual keyword, the compiler takes care of all this. So the compiler knows that when it is going to be further inherited as hybrid inheritance, I need to ensure that for the basemost type, I need to use a pointer and not directly try to access it. So that's a part of the language. Correct. That's a specific pointer of the type A pointer. You're right. And this A pointer is as a data member in both B as well as C. Right. That's the reason why we can access it. Yes. Okay. Okay. I have a question for you guys. Very, very important. So please pay very careful attention to this and get answer. Consider that I have a class called as base, and under the public section of this class base, I have a function called as void fn. Okay. I have another class called as derived, which is publicly inherited from base. And inside this, under the public section, I have a function void fn, which takes an integer parameter x. My question to you is this function overloading or is this function overriding? Okay, Shailesh, you said it's overloading. What about the rest? Is this function overloading or is this function overriding? Okay, Mayuresh, overloading again. Okay, Aditya. Akshay, Ankush, wake up. Reena, Shweta, क्या है ये? ओवरलोडिंग है, ओवरराइडिंग है? One. Okay, let's consider in the same example, अगर मैं यहाँ पर ये पैरामीटर पास नहीं करता, मतलब instead of this, I would have had something, let's say like this. अब ये क्या है? ओवरलोडिंग है, ओवरराइडिंग है? Everyone changes to overriding now. Well, you know what is the best part? ये कुछ भी नहीं, दोनों भी केस में ना ही तो ये ओवरलोडिंग था, ना ही तो ये ओवरराइडिंग था. They were two different functions defining two different scopes altogether. Basic rule of overloading. Overloading can only take place when the number of arguments change, the data type of argument change, or the sequence of data type of argument change, provided all these three functions or whatever these functions are defined within the same scope. Overriding is only possible provided I use virtual in the base class. तो अगर base class के function declaration पे मैंने virtual keyword associate किया तो ही वो ओवरराइडिंग होगा। हाँ, कुछ डिफरेंट आर्ग्यूमेंट्स था, बराबर है, लेकिन ओवरलोडिंग होने के लिए स्कोप एक होना जरूरी है। अगर आपके पास सपोज दो इंडिपेंडेंट क्लासेस हैं, क्लास ए है, क्लास बी है, क्लास बी के अंदर आपने एक फंक्शन एफ एन दिया, क्लास ए के अंदर एक फंक्शन एफ एन दिया, ये दोनों क्लास का एक दूसरे के साथ कोई कनेक्शन नहीं है, देयर इज नो रिलेशनशिप, तो इसको आप ओवरलोडिंग कैसे बोलोगे? इरिस्पेक्टिव ऑफ द आर्ग्यूमेंट्स, आर्ग्यूमेंट है नहीं है कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता, दो फंक्शन दो अलग अलग स्कोप के अंदर है, अगर दोनों फंक्शन तो अलग अलग स्कोप में है तो इसको हम लोग ओवरलोडिंग बोल ही नहीं सकते। हाँ, अगर मैंने ऐसे किया होता था, सपोज यहीं पर मैंने बोल दिया होता था void fn और यहाँ पर मैंने इंटीजर दिया है, या एक int कॉमा int दिया या int कॉमा फ्लोट दिया, ऐसे कुछ किया होता था तो आप बराबर बोलते हो ये ओवरलोडिंग होता था। बट ओवरलोडिंग होने के लिए ये तीनों फंक्शंस को एक ही स्कोप में होना चाहिए, अगर ये वो स्कोप में नहीं है तो ये ओवरलोडिंग नहीं होता है। और जैसे मैंने बताया, अगर ये फंक्शन सपोज मैंने वर्चुअल डिफाइन किया होता था तो जाके ये ओवरराइडिंग होता था, जब तक मैं वो नहीं करूं तब तक ये ओवरराइडिंग में नहीं है। ठीक है, नाउ लेट्स take the same example and be a bit more brief into it. No, this is for everywhere, Prerna. Whether you're talking about C++, whether you're talking about Java, whether you're talking about .NET, it is everywhere. Whenever you're talking about overloading, all the functions that are being overloaded, that we consider that are being overloaded, have to fall within the same scope. Then only it is called as overloaded, not otherwise. If B extends A, then in case of different languages, it will be different, but yeah, fine. So suppose class, yeah, that you're right. You're right. In case of Java, it is going to be like that. But right now, we are not considering Java. We are talking in terms of purely C++. So in case of C++, it's completely different. Why in Java it is in that particular pattern is because of some other concept which you come across with when we are talking about in Java. So there is something related to the language which we will discuss in detail pertaining to overriding in Java. But if I'm considering in case of C++, the functions have to be within the same scope to be overloaded. Even in Java, the functions have to be within the same scope to be overloaded. Overriding point differs because of different keyword support in both these languages. So based on to that language, it will differ. Okay, now my question to you was, okay, let's consider I have a class called as base, और इस क्लास बेस के अंदर पब्लिक सेक्शन के अंदर मैंने एक void fn नाम का फंक्शन दिया। Actually काम करता हूँ, I'll just do it in Eclipse, sorry, in Visual Studio. It will be easier for us to work. So let's consider something like this. Hash include IOStream using namespace std. I have a class called as base. Under the public section of this base class, I'm having a function void fn, and here I'm just going to give him an output cout inside base proposition operator fn. ठीक है, वैसे ही I'm having another class which is called as derived, which is publicly inherited from base. And inside this derived class, I am also having the function fn. If you notice, fn is with the same signature in both the base as well as the derived classes. Coming down further, come down to the main function. Inside my main function, I am using a statement base ptr is equal to new derived. Now we all are aware that we are capable of doing something like this, where the base class pointer is pointing to an object of the derived class. यहाँ पर एक टाइपकास्ट होता है। Can anyone tell me कि यहाँ पर कौन सा टाइपकास्टिंग हो रहा है? ये स्टेटमेंट पे टाइपकास्ट है। This is an internal typecast. No, Shailesh. This is an upcast. Remember what I told you? Whenever we go up the hierarchy, it is upcast. Whenever we come down the hierarchy, it is downcast. Now this is the concept I have. मेरा right hand side derived है, left hand side base है. So right hand side is more than the left hand side. So we are going up the hierarchy. Whenever you are going up the hierarchy, this is going to be upcast. Downcast ये कब होता? अगर ऐसे कुछ statement होता, derived star x ptr is equal to ptr. So then I'm coming right hand side में मेरा base है and I'm coming down the hierarchy. So I would have to do an explicit typecasting of derived star, which I would have said is downcast. Okay, please everyone always remember this. You have to see what is on your RHS. If the RHS is of the type derived and the LHS is of the type base, you are going from derived to base. When you are going from derived to base, you are going from down to up. So this is termed as an upcast. But when you have the RHS as base and the LHS as derived, you are going from base to derived. So you are going down the hierarchy, hence it is called as a downcast. It's very easy to remember. Upcast is always implicit. That means you don't have to do typecasting. So if you notice in my case, I don't have to do any typecasting out here. Right, there's no typecasting which I've done in this statement. But if I was to do it the other way around, I'm just compiling and showing you. This code works perfectly great. Now, if I was to do it other way around, I would say derived star x ptr is equal to ptr. The compiler will throw me an error out here. Cannot convert from base pointer to derived pointer, right? Because I'm performing a downcasting. So when I'm doing a downcasting, the explicit downcast is always required to be performed. Then only this will compile. या तो ये करो, अभी इसको हम लोग सी स्टाइल कास्टिंग बोलते हैं, जो बहुत पुराना हो गया टेक्निकली, या इसका एक ऑल्टरनेटिव है जो आप यूज कर सकते हो, which is something like this: dynamic underscore cast to derive pointer ptr. This is a right way of working around with it. So this is one which we can go ahead and work around. इसमें खाली criteria है that my class, that is the base class, should have at least one virtual function. तभी जाके ये काम करता, नहीं तो ये काम नहीं करता. या तो अगर आपको ये डायनेमिक क्लास नहीं करना है, तो डायनेमिक क्लास के बदले में एक दूसरा भी ऑपरेटर, टाइपकास्टिंग ऑपरेटर है, which I can use, which is a static class, जो इस केस में काम करता है. ठीक है. Anyway, now coming down to my question to you all. ये हमारा सिनारियो है, बेस क्लास हैज अ फंक्शन fn, डिराइव्ड क्लास हैज अ फंक्शन fn. ठीक है, दोनों का सिग्नेचर अगर आप देखोगे तो सेम है. मैंने आपको पहले ही बताया हुआ है, दिस इज नॉट फंक्शन ओवरलोडिंग. These are two different functions defined in two different scopes altogether. My question to you is, if I say ptr arrow fn, which function will be fired out here? You can just write b or d. B referring to base, d referring to derived. Come on, Shweta, Prerna, Akshay, Anand. Well, all of you are wrong. It is the base class function which will be executed. How did this magic happen? Okay, now consider, before I can give you the answer, now consider this was a derived class pointer pointing to an object of the derived class. And if I call the function of on the PTR, common sense, which function will be called? Come on, now this time the answer is going to be right. It is absolutely the derived type which is called. तो पहले केस में derived type क्यों कॉल नहीं होता है? Now pay attention to what I'm saying very 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 carefully. मैं को एक सबसे पहला क्वेश्चन आपको ये पूछना है, हमने यहाँ पर एक स्टेटमेंट लिया है न्यू डिराइव्ड. न्यू कीवर्ड मेमोरी कब एलोकेट करता है, कंपाइल टाइम पर या रन टाइम पर? When does the new keyword allocate memory? Absolutely, Shailesh. It is allocated at runtime. It is never done at compile time. इसका ये मतलब है कि while the compiler is compiling my code, he is totally unaware of this section. इसको नहीं पता कि ptr कहाँ पे point कर रहा है. He is not aware whether it is pointing to an object of base or whether it is pointing to an object of derived, because this information will only be given at runtime. Everyone agrees to this? जो भी मेरे राइट हैंड साइड के ऊपर है, राइट हैंड साइड के ऊपर जो भी होता है ये रन टाइम के ऊपर होता है. अगर ये रन टाइम के ऊपर होने वाला है तो कंपाइलर जब ये कोड को कंपाइल करेगा तो उसको ये नहीं पता कि राइट हैंड साइड पर ऑब्जेक्ट बेस का बन रहा है या डिराइव का बन रहा है. अगर ये आपको कंफ्यूजिंग लगता है तो कुछ ऐसे कंसिडर करो. मैंने एक स्टेटमेंट दिया cn वैल्यू. यहाँ पर मैं बोलता हूँ if value is equal to 1 then ptr is equal to new base, else ptr is equal to new right. Can anyone tell me now where ptr is pointing to? I'm not going to give you the value of value, whether value is 1 or something else. I'm not going to tell you that. Can anyone tell me ptr कहाँ पर point करेगा? अगर मैंने आपको वैल्यू का वैल्यू नहीं बताया, नहीं ना मयूरेश, कैसे आप बता सकते हो कि पीटीआर बेस को पॉइंट करेगा? तो कौन से ऑब्जेक्ट को पॉइंट करेगा हम कैसे आइडेंटिफाई करेंगे? ये तो डिपेंड करेगा कि वैल्यू का वैल्यू क्या आता है ना. अगर वैल्यू विल बी इक्वल टू 1 एट रन टाइम, जो यूजर के इनपुट के बेसिस के ऊपर डिपेंड करेगा. अगर वैल्यू 1 है तो बराबर वो बेस के ऑब्जेक्ट को पॉइंट करेगा. लेकिन अगर वैल्यू 1 के अलावा और कुछ भी है, विच में भी 0 2 4 व्हाटएवर और अ नेगेटिव वैल्यू, इट इज गोना पॉइंट टू द ऑब्जेक्ट ऑफ डिराइव. बट ये मैं डिटरमिन नहीं कर सकता जब तक मेरे को वैल्यू नहीं पता क्या है. और वैल्यू मेरे को रन टाइम के ऊपर यूजर के पास इनपुट मालूम पड़ने वाला है. So I have no way of identifying where PTR is going to point to. The same problem I have out here. The compiler does not know whether this is pointing to an object of base or whether it's pointing to an object of derived. He's absolutely got no clue. हाँ, लेकिन कंपाइलर को एक चीज 100% श्योर है यहाँ पर, पीटीआर का डेटा टाइप. वो बोलते पीटीआर जो है वो 100% बेस का है. मेरे को नहीं पता वो किधर पॉइंट कर रहा है, लेकिन है पॉइंटर बेस टाइप का, ये मेरे को पता है. तो व्हाट आई विल डू इज वेरी सिंपल. ये जो मेरा स्टेटमेंट है, आई एम डायरेक्टली गोइंग टू रिप्लेस इट एज बेस स्कोप रेजोल्यूशन ऑपरेटर एफएन. चाहे कोई भी ऑब्जेक्ट सामने रहे, मेरे को कोई मतलब नहीं उससे. आई नो कि बेस का एफएन ही फायर होना है यहाँ पर. देयर इज नो अदर क्वेश्चन ऑल टुगेदर. इज दिस क्लियर टू एवरीवन? ग्रेट, फैंटास्टिक. नाउ ध्यान ध्यान में रखना, आपने बोल दिया आपको ये क्लियर हो गया. So I'm going to ask you some questions on this very soon. Now my question is, or rather now my point is that मेरा जो बेस क्लास फंक्शन है, ये बेस क्लास फंक्शन को मैंने वर्चुअल कन्वर्ट कर दिया. ठीक है, ध्यान से देखो सब लोग. The base class function fn has been converted to a virtual function. Derived class is inherited from base class. The function fn has been defined in the derived class. Can I call this as function overriding? Is this what is function overriding? Absolutely. The base class function has been defined as virtual. We are redefining that function inside the derived class. This is perfectly function overriding. Now I say base stuff ptr is equal to new derived ptr arrow fn. This function will be called base or derived. Okay, Prerna says derived. Come on, Shailesh, Akshay base. तो अक्षय वर्चुअल और नॉन वर्चुअल फंक्शन में कोई डिफरेंस ही नहीं रहेगा अगर दोनों टाइम पे बेस ही कॉल होने वाला है तो, है ना? सोचिए उसके बारे में. Yes, the function of the derived class is going to be fired. So let's just see the output first and then we'll talk about it. So if you notice, in this case, even though the object is of the type derived and the pointer is of the type base, we get to see that the derived class version is getting called. Now, how exactly does this happen? मैं कुछ गलत स्टेटमेंट दे रहा हूँ, ध्यान से सुनना। मैं बोलता हूँ कि जैसे ही आप यहाँ पर वर्चुअल कीवर्ड ऊपर यूज करते हो, मेरे कंपाइलर को ऑटोमेटिकली कुछ एक्स्ट्रा विजन मिल जाता है फ्यूचर में देखने के लिए। जैसे आपने यहाँ पर वर्चुअल कीवर्ड यूज किया, कंपाइलर गेट्स सम great vision through which he can identify in the future. Because as far as what statements we had made earlier, compiler never knows about the RHS. ये हम लोगों ने स्टेटमेंट दिया था, मतलब टेक्निकली स्पीकिंग अभी भी कंपाइलर को ये नहीं पता कि पीटीआर डिराइव को पॉइंट कर रहा है या पीटीआर बेस को पॉइंट कर रहा है। तो बेसिकली ये जजमेंट ही वो नहीं कर सकता है कि मेरे को यहाँ पर बेस का फंक्शन कॉल करना है या डिराइव का कॉल करना है। लेकिन जैसे ही मैंने यहाँ पे वर्चुअल दे दिया, तो इतना कैसे पता चल गया कि यहाँ पर मेरे को डिराइव का फंक्शन कॉल करना है और बेस का नहीं करना है? तो एग्जैक्टली हुआ क्या? अब ये समझने के लिए आई एम जस्ट गोइंग टू make some changes. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, let me get back to Paint and we'll work on this. अब इसके लिए I am going to create 3 basic functions just for your understanding, no other reason. So यहाँ पर मैं base class के अंदर default implementation assume कर देना, opening closing curly braces doesn't really matter. यहाँ पर मेरे पास 3 virtual function है, sorry, इस तरीके से होने वाला है, virtual void fn, virtual void xn and void mn. Please notice that I have only 2 functions which are virtual in my base class, fn and xn. mn is a non-virtual function. यहाँ पर मैंने एक क्लास लिया है, यहाँ पर मैंने क्लास लिया है derive के नाम से, which is publicly inherited from base. और इसके अंदर पब्लिक सेक्शन के अंदर मैंने एक ही फंक्शन रखा है void fn, कुछ इस तरीके से। ठीक है, ये हमारा क्लास स्ट्रक्चर बाद में जाके बनने वाला है। Now, what exactly happens when you define any one single function inside your class which is as a virtual function? The moment you define at least one function within your class which is a virtual function, there are 3 changes that take place. Guys, please take very careful attention to this. This is a very important concept, and that's how you'll understand how virtual functions work in any programming language, including Java. Please be very careful. The moment you add a virtual keyword inside any class, 3 changes take place. The first change, for that particular class, a table gets created which is called as a virtual function table or the V table. The size of this V table is governed by the number of virtual functions within the class. तो अभी मेरे केस में 2 ही virtual function है, इसके लिए ये virtual table का size 8 bytes होगा, 4 byte हर एक function के लिए। ठीक है, इसके अंदर 2 ऑफसेट आते हैं, 0, 1, स्टार्टिंग एड्रेस जैसे आप बोल सकते हो, जस्ट एन ऑफसेट। Now a virtual function table will only contain the base address or the memory address of virtual functions. तो मेरा जो void fn function है base class का, इसका मेमोरी एड्रेस क्या है? लेट्स से मेरे exe में कहीं तक भी 2000 मेमोरी एड्रेस पे पड़ा हुआ है, तो ये आपका जो मेमोरी एड्रेस 2000 है वो यहाँ पर आ जाएगा। और इसको टेक्निकली हम कैसे रेफर करेंगे? तो बेस स्कोप रेजोल्यूशन ऑपरेटर fn। सेकंड मेरा एक्शन फंक्शन है, ये 3000 पे है, तो ये समझो 3000 का एंट्री आ गया और ये आ जाएगा बेस स्कोप रेजोल्यूशन ऑपरेटर। तो मेरा पहला चेंज है कि जैसे कंपाइलर ने नोटिस किया कि क्लास के अंदर मेरे पास एक वर्चुअल टेबल है, सॉरी क्लास के अंदर मेरे पास कम से कम एक वर्चुअल फंक्शन है, इसने इसके लिए एक वर्चुअल टेबल बनाया, दिस इज एलोकेटेड पर क्लास बेसिस। इसका मतलब है कि एक क्लास के लिए सिर्फ एक ही वर्चुअल टेबल बनाया जाता है। So it will be allocated per class basis, एक वर्चुअल टेबल बनेगा, इस वर्चुअल टेबल में खाली वर्चुअल फंक्शंस के एंट्री आएंगे, starting from option 0 going on till the number of virtual functions you have. और ये समझो virtual table खुद है memory address 7000, ऐसा हमने assume किया हुआ है। अगर आप notice करोगे तो mn is not a virtual function, hence its entry does not come out। ये आपका first change हो गया। Second change, by default आपके क्लास के अंदर एक नया पॉइंटर इंट्रोड्यूस किया जाएगा which is __ vfptr, right? करेक्ट चलिए, तो ये पॉइंटर इंट्रोड्यूस किया जाता है which is __ vfptr। इसकी वजह से the size of your object will increase by 4 bytes। तो 4 बाइट से ये इंक्रीमेंट हो जाएगा। इसका मतलब है कि अगर आई वुड हैव कंसीडर्ड बेस क्लास के अंदर मेरे पास एक इंटीजर वेरिएबल x है, तो बेस का डिफॉल्ट साइज 4 होता था, नाउ इट विल बी 4 + 4 8 बाइट्स। दिस डज नॉट मैटर हाउ मेनी वर्चुअल फंक्शंस यू हैव। You may have 20 virtual functions inside the class base, but you will have only one virtual function pointer, and the job of that virtual function pointer eventually is to refer to this base address. So that's only one virtual table pointer which is created size 4 bytes. Now, this is your second change which has taken place out here. Next, when you compile your derived class, जैसे ही derived class notice करता है वो base class से inherited है, and base class has a virtual table, by default it's going to start preparing a virtual table. This virtual table is for derived, तो ये derived का खुद का VF table है। इसका मेमोरी एड्रेस लेट्स से 8000 है। इसमें मिनिमम 2 एंट्रीज आएंगे, 0th ऑफसेट पे और 1st ऑफसेट पे। अब कंपाइलर क्या दिखता है, बेस क्लास में फंक्शन fn है, ठीक है, ये वर्चुअल फंक्शन है टेबल के अंदर, चेक करता है क्या डिराइव्ड क्लास में एग्जैक्टली वैसा ही एक फंक्शन है क्या, सेम सिग्नेचर के साथ है। दैट मींस द यूजर इज ट्राइंग टू ओवरराइड, हेंस डिराइव्ड क्लास का जो फंक्शन है उसका एंट्री यहां पर दे दो, लेट्स से मेमोरी एड्रेस 4000। नेक्स्ट, बेस क्लास का एक्शन नाम का फंक्शन है, क्या डिराइव्ड क्लास में ऐसा कोई फंक्शन यूजर ने ओवरराइड किया है, नहीं किया है, तो व्हाट आई शुड डू, आई शुड गो अहेड and make a call to base colon xn at the same memory address, वही आएगा 3000। Now why have I let this blank space out here? If you have any new virtual functions in future, अगर मैंने डिफाइन किया यहाँ पर virtual void zn, अगर मैंने एक नया virtual function ऐड किया तो वो virtual function यहाँ पर ऐड किया जाएगा by saying derived zn। So any new function that I add, they can come at the bottom. Is everyone clear with the basic two changes that have taken place so far? Anyone has any questions for this? Great. Now, what is the next thing that happens? The most important change, that is the third change which I was talking about. ये है आपका थर्ड चेंज। अब थर्ड चेंज में क्या होता है, हमने एक स्टेटमेंट दिया था बेस स्टार ptr इज इक्वल टू न्यू डिराइव्ड, ठीक है। मैंने आपको बोला था अगर आपके फंक्शन वर्चुअल नहीं है और आपने ऐसा स्टेटमेंट दिया ptr arrow fn, तो ये क्या करता है, डायरेक्टली स्टेटमेंट देता है बेस स्कोप रेजोल्यूशन ऑपरेटर fn और ये फंक्शन को इन्वोक कर देता है, ठीक है। इसीलिए हम लोग इसको अर्ली बाइंडिंग स्टैटिक पॉलीमॉर्फिज्म या कंपाइल टाइम पॉलीमॉर्फिज्म बोलते थे, लेकिन अब ये नहीं कर सकता है ऐसे। तो अब क्या हो रहा है बेसिकली, now what basically is happening is till now the compiler is not aware of this section। इसको ये नहीं पता कि राइट हैंड साइड में बेस है या राइट हैंड साइड के अंदर डिराइव्ड है, ये अभी भी उसको नहीं पता। उसको पता है कि पॉइंटर ptr बेस टाइप का है, दिस इज ओनली अवेयरनेस दैट ही हैज। तो जैसे ही आप बोलते हो ptr arrow fn, द कंपाइलर नोटिसेस दैट fn जो फंक्शन मेरा है ये बेस क्लास के अंदर वर्चुअल डिफाइन किया गया है, उसका एंट्री वर्चुअल टेबल पॉइंट वर्चुअल फंक्शन टेबल के अंदर पड़ा हुआ है। Because this function has an entry in the virtual table, I cannot directly make a call to this function। तो ये फंक्शन को कॉल करने के लिए वो एक सिंपल फॉर्मूला यूज करता है, वो बोलता है ptr arrow access the virtual function table pointer, that is the vfptr, plus add the offset of the function to be invoked multiplied by 4. मेरे को भी ये यूज करना पड़ेगा. ऑफसेट ऑफ फंक्शन fn क्या है? 0 1, ये वाला ऑफसेट, ठीक है, इंटू 4. इंटू 4 क्यों? क्योंकि हर एक एंट्री यहाँ पर एक मेमोरी एड्रेस है और मेमोरी एड्रेस का साइज हमेशा कितना होता है? 4 बाइट्स. तो उसके बेसिस के ऊपर यू कैन कैलकुलेट which function I need to invoke from this particular section. इसके लिए ये फंडा यूज करता है. अब नाउ लेट्स कंसीडर, अगर जो आपका ऑब्जेक्ट है ये बेस के ऑब्जेक्ट को पॉइंट कर रहा था, ptr is pointing to base. अगर ये बेस के ऑब्जेक्ट को पॉइंट कर रहा है तो vtr arrow vfptr ये कहां पे पॉइंट करेगा? 7000 के ऊपर पॉइंट करेगा. अगर ये डिराइव को पॉइंट कर रहा है तो 8000 पे करेगा, लेकिन क्योंकि ये बेस के ऑब्जेक्ट को पॉइंट कर रहा है तो ये 7000 पे पॉइंट करेगा. So if it is pointing to 7000, this will become 7000 plus offset of fn. Offset of fn is 0. So 0 into 4, which is equal to 7000. Invoke the method and memory address 7000. 7000 पे कौन सा memory address पे कौन सा function आता है? Base fn. ठीक है. Now, considering the second scenario, if the object is of the type derived, ये रन टाइम पे उसको डिटरमिन करना है. वैसे ही अगर डिराइव का है तो डिराइव का वर्चुअल टेबल कहां पर है? 8000. 8000 प्लस ऑफसेट ऑफ fn जो चेंज नहीं होता है 0 into 4, which is equal to 8000. Invoke the memory address 8000, which is none other than derived type. Is everyone clear क्या चल रहा है यहाँ पर? बोलिए शैलेश, I'll clear your doubt. What is your question? No, Shailesh. It is not at compile time that the memory address is 7000. See, what compile time, the compiler is not aware of any damn thing. Okay, he has absolutely no clue of whatever is going on. So when you're talking about compile time has got no clue whatsoever. What is basically happening out here is at runtime. Okay, or let's put it this way: in your code you have defined the statement ptr is equal to ptr arrow fn. This is the statement you've defined, right? Now, when the compiler is compiling this code, he knows that fn is a virtual function. This he is aware of. He knows that ptr is of the type base, and he knows that base has a virtual table. Correct? Now, what he is unaware of is whether ptr will point to derived or whether it will point to base. This is something which he is unclear about. Because he does not have that information, so what he does is at compile time, he uses this formula. He just replaces the call of ptr arrow fn with ptr arrow underscore vfptr plus offset of fn into 4. Now offset of fn is known to him at compile time only. This multiplied by 4. This is known to him at compile time. What he is not aware of is the address of vfptr. Now when at runtime you go ahead and give him an object of the type base or derived, whatever you may be giving. Okay. When you give him an object, let's say of derived, if you're giving him an object of derived, derived will have its own vfptr. For the object of derived, the vfptr will be pointing to 8000. So automatically, this figure of ptr underscore vfptr will change to 8000. So all that is happening at runtime is this memory address fill in the blank is being filled up. Please remember, compilers are not there at runtime. This is just an instruction of accessing a memory address. जैसे आप कोई ऑब्जेक्ट बनाते हो मेमोरी में, आपने बोल दिया पीटीआर इज इक्वल टू न्यू डिराइव, तो न्यू डिराइव कोई तो मेमोरी लोकेशन पे एलोकेट होता है, जो मेमोरी लोकेशन पे एलोकेट होता है वो पीटीआर में जाके सेट होता है। यहाँ पर भी वैसे ही कुछ हो रहा है, वो मेमोरी एड्रेस सेट हो गया पीटीआर के अंदर और पीटीआर ने उसका एक डेटा नंबर एक्सेस किया जिससे उसको पता चला कि उसका वर्चुअल टेबल कहाँ पर है और वो वर्चुअल टेबल के बेसिस के ऊपर उसको कौन सा फंक्शन कॉल करना है। Does that clear your doubt, Shailesh? Great. Anyone with any other questions? Yes. Yes, Shailesh. The offsets have to be always the same. It can never be different. Because अगर ऑफसेट डिफरेंट हो जाएगा तो फिर आपका इन्वोकेशन अलग हो जाएगा ना। अगर नीचे समझो गलती से एक्शन पहले आ गया और एफएन बाद में आ गया तो बेस जब एफएन को कॉल करेगा तो डिराइव का एक्शन कॉल हो जाएगा, तो वो हम लोग कर नहीं सकते। तो इसके लिए बेस से डिराइव पे जाता है। इसीलिए मैंने आपको बोला था कि अगर आप डिराइव क्लास फॉर्म हो रहा है, जब डिराइव क्लास फॉर्म हो रहा है वो हमेशा चेक करता है कि बेस क्लास का वर्चुअल टेबल क्या है, यहाँ का एफएन फंक्शन को उठाएगा फिर वो डिराइव में लिखेगा फिर आगे जाएगा। तो ऑलवेज the offsets will remain the same and will always be considered from the base class itself. Anyone with any doubts, anyone with any questions, anyone would like to ask anything? Anything, absolutely. Great. So we are going to conclude the session today out here only. Uh, just a small gist. This is how your sessions are going to be again conducted. They're going to be quite brainstorming. You have to have your complete attention. I know it's quite difficult to sit for a 3.5 hour to 4 hour session like this, but if we have to cover all those contents, we have no choice. So we have to go in that particular fashion. And in fact, now the kind of knowledge and the depth of knowledge will keep on increasing day by day. Tomorrow will be comparatively a shorter session. Again, it will be around 2.5 odd hours or something like that. I have not taken up one concept of the agenda today, that is constructors and destructors. I think it's too heavy for the day. So this is something which I will take on a bit later on for you all, maybe tomorrow or maybe in the following week. I would just request you all to just go ahead and read through that. Nothing great, but just one or two points which I want you to be aware of in case of constructors and destructors, which will be crucial for us while working in Java. So that's something which I wanted you all to be just aware of. So we'll check out to that. So while you're answering to my poll questions, uh, this is going to be there for 2 or 3 sessions, just to know how things work. Um, I would also request you to have your stuff working today. Just revise on these concepts that we have seen um, so far, and just take a visit of this whatever I've spoken to you all about. Now, I am also going to make this again available online for you all. And send you the link so that you can revisit this session and have a look at it. Secondly, today was a second session to get the feel. If everything is fine, I would like you all to make the balance 50% payment. So now you've already done 10% payment, so you have to do a balance of 40% payment for this course. You can directly transfer the funds to our account. I would be sending you all the bank details and you can transfer the funds. The choice is yours. Either you can do 40 or the remaining balance, whatever, that depends on you. I am still open for people who want to get comfortable for tomorrow's session. You can take tomorrow's session also free. There's no problem. You can always, think and decide how to go about with it. I mean, in case you are uncomfortable in the pattern or whatever, we are always open. Frankly, and Protect never uh, just forces anyone to go ahead with anything. Rather, I don't do that. So Just go ahead and we'll see. There's someone who's left for voting. Just finish a poll, please. Okay. Um, one more poll I'm going to give you. That's okay. That should be enough for the polling. Fine. So I'll catch up with you all tomorrow evening, 5 o'clock. Now tomorrow's session is going to be based on the introduction to Java, as to why Java was introduced, stuff like that. And we are starting off with full-fledged Java tomorrow. So tomorrow, all that we're going to see is a Hello World program, and you'll see that we'll spend a lot of time trying to develop that Hello World program and getting familiarized with your the basic concepts and stuff like that. So tomorrow is going to be purely focused into the history of Java, along with the basic Hello World application that I'm going to be designing. So that would be our agenda for tomorrow's session. Okay, guys, thank you so much. Hope everyone has been able to gather whatever information they wanted today. If you still have doubts or queries, I'm going to be available for another 5-7 minutes. So if you have any questions, you can surely go ahead and fire. I'll be more than glad to help you out with the same. So if you don't have any questions or stuff, uh, you can end the training and carry on further. No issues. You're most welcome, Nikhil. Yep, Aditya. Then I hope today you do not have a problem. Great. See you guys tomorrow. Yes, Prema, you raise your hand. Something I can help you out with. Prema, this is unfortunately known as the diamond problem. This is just a terminology which is taken out by some, I don't know, I don't know what to tell, but some silly person, just because that hybrid inheritance is in the form of the diamond shape, a rhombus shape. That's the reason why they call it as a diamond problem. Technically, there is, I'm pretty sure you being a girl would be aware that there is no problem with diamonds ever. So this is just a silly terminology which has been taken out by someone.
Yes, because many a times it happens that whenever you go for an interview and people say the diamond problem, and that's pretty confusing, to just an answer, what is a diamond problem?
Yeah. That's because, as I said, these are the guys who have been reading to Balguru Swami and stuff. So Balguru Swami often uses all these kind of terminologies, and that's the reason why you get to hear something like that. But technically, there is no such thing. Like I'll just give you an instance. When I had started my career, I came across this book on pandas. And I was working for with C since quite some time, and there I came to a concept called as wild pointers. I was pretty amazed. Oh, I've never heard this concept of wild pointers after, being with C for such a long time. Eventually, what was the answer? Wild pointer is a pointer which is pointing to a garbage memory location, a dangling pointer. So
Oh,
it's just a terminology that some people use, and they come up with that concept. So
okay,
that's nothing great.
okay.
Most welcome. Nilesh, do you have any doubts? Great. So fine, I'll be ending the session. You've not left, so I was wondering. Thank you so much.